Oh my. I just I outdid myself. Okay, I'm not going to break my arm, pat myself on the back, but I did do outdo myself. I decided to take what I had taught you, and trust me, none of you had this information. I didn't have it. The Federal Accounting Standard Advisory Statement number 56, what we talked about in the last segment. Hear me and hear me clearly on this. Just on a lark, I wanted to see if this was like in Canada or the UK or maybe even the European Union or Australia and New Zealand. And I thought maybe this is beyond the United States, just as a guess, because we know all the central banks are tied together. And this is basically something that benefits central banking and the Federal Reserve. The fact that they can steal your money, use it any way they want, and obscure the public records and basically lie to and do it all in secret. We talked about that in the last segment. I read to you from a summation of the policy that Congress passed to do this. Well, I found it is international. I shouldn't be surprised. And I just, like I said, I just took a wild chance. I'm going to tell you about that after we talk to you about something that I think is really, really important here. And what I'm talking to you about here is, I think, the next great investment. And what we're talking about here is uranium. No, that was the last one. Uranium is something you should already be doing based on what I've told you. The next investment craze that the elite are in, and I think it's a can't miss because the elite are jumping this and the government's supporting this, is tungsten. And that goes to our forever wars. So if you're looking for, well, God, what can I do with my money? Well, I'm going to show you. We're talking to you about what Vault Strategic Mining Corp is doing. And fantastic. Their website is vaultstrategic.com. And they're into tungsten. And we haven't done anything seriously with tungsten since 2015. And now we're involved in this big war with no end in sight. Despite what the administration's saying, they're lying to you. There's no end in sight. And then, of course, we got Venezuela waiting on the horizon, and we got Cuba waiting on the horizon. We're drawing up contingency plans militarily for Cuba. You may have heard that. Well, this makes tungsten very, very valuable. In fact, the Pentagon's dumped billions into this. So to me, this is a can't miss. This is where the elite are going because they want to fight these forever wars. So what people in the military industrial complex do, they not only make money for companies like Raytheon, but now they're going to make huge money in going into supporting stock that provides raw materials necessary for war. I think I made the case. Free video to watch. Go to vault-presentation.com/the Common Sense Show. Now that part on the Common Sense Show, there's dashes between each one of those words, the Common Sense Show with a dash in between. So again, vault-presentation.com/the Common Sense Show with the slashes. Hey, check it out because I think if you've got some money to get into this, I think this is going to pay great return on investment. Well, let's take a look at what I learned just by sheer chance, expanding on the last segment in something I hadn't planned to do today. And I just said, gee, is it international? And I thought, stupid me, I should have figured this out. The organization called the Bank of International Settlements, the BIS for short, take out the I, you really know what they're all about because they're not honest. So the Bank of International Settlements has issued a memorandum to all central banks in the world. Remember, the BIS is the central banker's bank, and a lot of the policies flow from there. So, BIS, banking institutions are free to break the law. Now, that's my paraphrase of what they put out. They got into very, let's put it this way. The way that rule number 56 that I quoted in the last segment, the way that's set up came right out of the BIS. They used the same exact language. In other words, they can set up secret groups to make secret policies to make money transactions opaque, and you don't have the right to know. And this came right out of the BIS. Now, there's something else that came out of this. I was like, holy crap. This implicates our DOJ if they're indeed doing what this says and gives them so-called legal protection to do it. It's basically making them a criminal enterprise. I'm in shock over this, but let me just read to you what this is. The BIS went on to say that there can be a return of a margin of profit to any kind of governmental oversight and legal enforcement agency. Well, that would be the Department of Justice in the United States. So here's what we're saying, that the elite who are taking advantage of these opaque new procedures where they can steal, like they've already done $21 trillion, they can keep it from the public's view. They can lie to you about it, and then they pay a kickback to the DOJ so there's no prosecution or they don't challenge something or file an action with the Supreme Court to declare this to be unconstitutional, which it is. This is absolutely stunning. And I think that you probably should say, whoa. So here's in effect what it can do. Okay. What a game this is. This is awesome for them. They can lose trillions. The citizens can replace the money, and then they rinse and repeat. Now, you're probably thinking, okay, well, how does this apply? Is there a concrete example where this is in play? And I'm glad you asked, because there is. It's called the data centers and the AI revolution. And you're about ready to get a real education on how this applies. This came down as a process of what data centers are going to do with your money, and you don't have a right to know about it. And you can't sue. And the DOJ will get a kickback for going along with it. Again, the law in America, it's entitled Federal Accounting Standard Advisory Statement number 56. They brought it in during the Kavanaugh hearings with all that hullabaloo, right? All the fanfare, his drinking habits and involving a woman and all that nefarious stuff. I don't want to get into the details, but that was a distraction for them to sneak this through under the cover of chaos. This is crazy, people. This is nuts. This is worse than the sheriff of Nottingham. Where's Robin Hood when you need him? And if ever there was a case for a tax rebellion, this is it. This is it. We pay our taxes to do our bridges. And, I look at the money that we're wasting. Okay. Take just 2 trillion of the 21 trillion. Just take 10% of it. Can you imagine if you gave this to the major cities? The bridges get fixed, the roads get paved, right? You're not putting homeless in prison like they are in Utah, preparing to do in Georgia, spreading to 8 other states as we've covered. You actually provide them with some help. Maybe you're doing drug addiction counseling. You're doing some job training. You're doing something productive with your money to help people, which is what our tax money is supposed to be going for, not to pad the pockets of people to get rich and to keep you from knowing what they're doing. That's in effect what's going on. But we're going to come back and you are going to be shocked, shocked at what I tell you on the application part of this to something that I've been all over. I'm not a data center fan. I'm not an AI advocate. I think limited use of it, no sentience, right? No mass job replacement, because you kill capitalism. If you don't have jobs, you don't have discretionary spending, you don't have an economy, you don't have capitalism. You have an oligarchy. That's what you've got. Well, wait until we come back in the next segment, and you're going to say, "Holy cow, Pat, man, this is absolutely stunning." Tell you, the criminal enterprise that's become our government, and I'm not comfortable saying this, but you tell me, do you think this sounds like it's legal? No, it's not. It's unconstitutional. It's illegal. But they're passing these resolutions and laws to somehow make it legal, even though it violates our Constitution. But because you can't find out what's going on and they keep it all secret, you can't have public interest groups, say like the Institute of Justice, take up a public interest case and sue over this. I will be forwarding this information to places like Judicial Watch, Institute of Justice. I'm hoping I can get them interested. The Goldwater Institute here locally in Arizona, that if it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't be in my house right now. It had been stolen underneath me, as well as for 300 of my neighbors. And we'd have lost that property rights battle without any compensation for the loss of our homes. And that was all because of the Goldwater Institute and Clint Bullock, who's now Supreme Court State Justice. Thank you very much, Clint. I'll always be indebted to you. We need groups to do this kind of action to undo this thievery. But I am going to go conspiratorial in part 4 of this because I can't make sense of what's going on unless I put a little conspiratorial overtone to it. Because on the surface, this makes no sense until you get below the surface and say, what's really going on? I'm Dave Hodges. This is the Common Sense Show.